I'm so happy, Carolyn, to be here with you.
I'm
And
thrilled to be with you.
I think what I'm going to do is that, oh, good. So viewer comments will show up. Okay, perfect.
In under comments or private chat?
I think under comments. It says
Okay,
live.
great. No.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Well, so this is the first, I hope, of many office hours. And Carolyn and I were talking about the format. We've done a couple audio rooms together where you couldn't see us. We decided to choose live, and we are going to sort of pick a topic loosely. But if you have questions, please put them in the comments and I will read them. And I wanted to actually first, since this is our first one, explain like our relationship.
It's long, man.
It's ancient. But
Yeah.
first, I would love you to tell the audience about you.
Okay. So I am a former business person. I worked at startups and roughly, in media and entertainment before I took a big pivot kind of slowly over time into therapy. I continued to consult for a very long time, actually, until fairly recently. And I'm now fully into private practice. But the people that I see in general are people who are often wanting to talk, sort of high achieving executives, the ones that Maura gives advice to, and navigating careers and personal lives, which is kind of like the meat of what we all do now.
Of what we do. Hold on. Marianne says, what is the format? Marianne, you can just put a question in a comment and we will do our best to answer it. We are coming to you via LinkedIn on a third-party platform called StreamYard. So I can't post right now on LinkedIn because I'm on this third-party platform, but I can see your comments. And so if you have a question, put it in the comment box and we'll answer it. I hope that answers your question. Sorry, Carolyn.
No, don't worry. So Maura and I have been friends really since college and have seen each other through many pivots. And now it feels very lucky that our professional worlds overlap.
It's a gift to be.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a total gift. And it's funny because you always wanted to be a therapist.
I did. I would act like a therapist even when I wasn't a therapist.
Yes, you did. And you and I, even when we were like, I was 19 and you were 20, would talk endlessly
about mental health.
And so I love seeing this come full circle. I am not a therapist, I should say. I am not even a pretend therapist. I am just a person. I'm not a journalist either, although I write a lot. I'm a leader with anxiety and bipolar 2. And so this is my passion in life, is to help tell people stories and help sort of break up stigma around mental health and leadership, right? Because we can still be leaders who have mental health challenges.
Right. And I mean, the truth is that this has coexisted for a very long time, right? Like there are so many CEOs who, in fact, are bipolar, but people never talked about it before. And now that we can talk about it, we can actually talk about how to use these mental health. I don't even want to call them challenges in really productive ways.
Yes.
Mental health, I don't know, ride-alongs that are part of everybody's personality. Effectively.
Yep. Well, and anxiety, right, which is a normal human emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I did a 6 a.m. podcast recording this morning.
Oh,
super fun. With a researcher who I think is amazing in Hong Kong. Her name is Bonnie Hayden Chang, and she teaches at Hong Kong Business School. And she's a psychologist by training, PhD. And she said to me, she's an anxiety researcher and she studies anxiety and leadership and all the stuff that I talk about a lot. And she said, the field had a lot of research about how anxiety impacts us at work. And it was all negative until recently. and that she's part of a new sort of school of scholars who are really looking at how anxiety can be even a positive
Yeah.
in your leadership if you understand it. And, you know, as Wendy Suzuki, who's a neuroscience at NYU, says, it's about that knife's edge.
Yeah.
Right, where you have the anxiety and you can sort of understand it and look at it,
Yeah.
and choose to use it as motivation.
Yeah. And like accept it, right, as part of you, and then, you know, harness it when you can,
Mhm.
and quiet it when it's not being your friend. But know that, like, you know, we would be out of business if it was such a thing to just like remove anxiety from people's brains.
I mean, that's
And
it.
I don't even think that would be a good thing, to be honest,
Why
right?
not?
Because we would, why not?
Because we'd
Because
probably all die, right? Because anxiety
well, we would
exists.
die. But I mean, adaptively, it wouldn't be good. It would be like, you know, you wouldn't be afraid your house would burn down when the smoke alarm is going off. But but also because a lot of times anxiety, you know, first you can feel it in your body and it's telling you something. And what it's telling you is something really important. And so that's why we don't want it to be completely gone. We just don't want to be ruled by it. You know, you remain in charge.
Hmm. So I want to talk today. There's a few things on my mind,
Yeah.
and I want to talk today about sort of taking stock. It's the end of the year
Yeah.
for most of us, and it's also a really anxious time right now,
Mhm.
macro,
Yeah.
and a lot of people I think are super just exhausted. It's
Yeah.
been years now of
Yeah.
chaos and grief and fear. And yet we still, you know, we sort of in our human brains, right? We look ahead.
Yeah.
How do you think about the end of the year? And from a personal perspective, sort of your own mental health and either restoring or making it like time for recovery. Like what is the symbolism of the end of the year for you?
Well, for me personally, it just, frankly, it always gets hectic.
Yeah.
And like gone are, you know, I don't have a Santa fantasy anymore. I'm not gonna be like whisked away to Wonderland.
My 7-year-old last night said, Mom, I know Santa doesn't exist, so just whatever,
Oh.
I'll tell you what I want from Santa.
You know, I will say to that, I one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is, and this is a tangent, so pull me back if you need to, but like, isn't it interesting that this is like this big lie? It's one of the only big lies I can think of that so much of the world is in on, that we keep perpetuating, and it can feel really funny to be like, okay, yes, I lied to you, but in this case, it's fine. Like, it's
Don't
not
lie.
really
Don't
fine.
lie.
Don't lie, but I'm doing this thing with seemingly the rest of the world that apparently is okay. And actually, another therapist said, you know, if you're feeling conflicted about that, and but you don't want to be the one to burst the bubble with your children, just like be a little sloppy and let it come to them when they're ready. Like, you don't have to be the one to be like, Santa's not real.
Right. Right.
But you can let them piece it together, and they will piece it together when they're ready
Well,
to.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. It made me feel better about sneaking packages into the trunk of my car where they could not be
I think they
found.
still like it though.
Yeah, because it's nice to believe in magic.
It's a ritual, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so back
But
to your end of
getting
year.
back to your question,
Yeah.
your end of your question. I mean, it can be whatever you want it to be, but let's first acknowledge that like it gets just, in terms of work, in terms of social obligations, and in terms of familial obligations, it gets busy. So if your idea is that this is going to be joyous and restorative, then you have to know it's not going to be. So
Mm.
let's like align our expectations with reality. And you may have some quiet moments in it, but I would say like in those quiet moments, you want to remember to like focus on what's been really positive
Mm.
about the past year and what you want to bring forward into the next.
Do you have
Yeah.
do you have a ritual around that?
I have before New Year's, always come up with, I mean, it's so silly, but I like it, like a rhyming motto that goes with the year. So 2023 will have to end in an E, kind of a thing. And it's sort of like my hopes and intentions for the coming year of like how I'm going to focus my time and energy.
What was 22's?
I keep them in my iPhone notes. I'll have to look it up.
Oh my gosh.
2022, gosh, it was probably something that, and I'm too, oh, here we go. It's fun to do something new. Which was, I don't know that I've ever actually shared it with anyone outside of my
so corny.
So corny. But I think at the end of last year, we were feeling so like downtrodden by the restrictive routines that had come from like the COVID tests, and here was this Omicron thing, and here you have to get another booster, and like everything felt so contained, which actually, there were benefits to that, but it was feeling like, wow, let's also break out of that in a way that feels good.
I like the ritual. I like the ritual. I think it's really smart.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. And it's not like, it doesn't, this is a knife's edge thing, but it wasn't like 2021 sucked. It was like, here's what I want to do a little bit more of in 2022.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like to observe the solstice, which is the darkest day of the year. Is usually around December, like 22nd?
23rd.
Is it? Yeah. I don't know when it is.
Maybe 22nd, 21st or 22nd.
Yeah, around then. And I like to do that, and I like to do a little ritual then, because it feels like, right, obviously the transition from the darkest night into the growing of the light forward. And I think that's just a really beautiful thing. So I sort of sit there and I try to think of the things that I was not proud of myself for this year, that I want to change behaviors. It's a little bit like Yom Kippur in my own head.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for the noise. And
I would want to reframe that a little bit, by the way.
What?
If I were therapizing you, the things that you were not proud of. Could we just say like the things you want to do differently?
Okay, that's good.
Or like the things you learned from. Yeah. And it's subtle, but it makes a big difference.
There's a little bit of atonement in there.
You want to atone?
Yeah, a little bit.
Why? Okay, you don't have to answer that. But like, I don't think that has to be an important, because if you think about each year as like a march towards like more understanding of ourselves, and hopefully like insight and appreciation for how we want to live in the future. There's nothing that you've done that's like, there are like very few things that you can say that was a huge mistake that I can't learn from.
But the act of atoning is almost learning from it, right? It's saying,
yes, it is, but it doesn't have to be like I effed up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's funny, when my mother growing up was going through her pagan phase, they had a ritual called burn and affirm, which is actually amazing on solstice. And so you would write down what you'd want to change, and you would literally burn it. And then you would write down 3 things that you sort of aspire to, and you would affirm it.
Right.
And I do love that. And I sort of do a little bit of that.
And is the intention of the burning to be like, I'm never doing this again? Or this like, by acknowledging this past thing, I'm releasing it?
Yeah, it's gone. I'm not going to dwell on it.
Oh,
It's gone.
okay. Well, I can get behind that.
I know. I like it.
Yeah.
What do you feel like the people you're seeing in your practice, like generally, or what you're seeing, that people are approaching the end of the year, the holidays differently this year? This year
I
does
think so.
feel to
It feels
me,
different.
it's like we're coming to to me, it feels like we're coming to a precipice, and it's like we're going to jump off in 23, and who the hell knows?
I don't think it's that, but I think that, I think for 100 years, we're going to be trying to understand the impact of the pandemic. And
Mm,
I think it's been a lot harder than everybody anticipated to get back to normal. Because what we weren't allowed to acknowledge pre-pandemic was that normal didn't feel so ideal. And then we had this opportunity to like stop and reformat. So as everybody's reemerging in this rush to like do all the things, all of a sudden people are like, why doesn't this feel amazing? Like, I wanted to go to Paris, but I realize actually that now I'm going to Paris with a 3-year-old and it's not fun. But I said to myself during the pandemic, I just can't wait to go to Paris and I'm going to take the whole family. And so there's a little bit of that, of like, wow, this thing that I couldn't do that I now can do actually is really overwhelming.
interesting.
Um, and a feeling of like trying to keep up,
Huh.
which is not always useful.
No.
And then, there are like a lot of people have a lot of economic fears, and like with good reason.
So what's your advice on that, sort of looking forward and feeling anticipatory anxiety? Like even today, every time I'm on LinkedIn and I'm seeing the
Yeah.
headlines up top, it's layoffs, 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 or it's going to be a
Yeah.
bumpy ride in 23, and it's hard not to get that little sort of jolt.
Like, ew, that doesn't
Yeah,
feel good.
yeah.
I mean, I think you have to understand that there's a lot that happens in the world that we can't control. And if you love your job, keep loving your job. And things might shift and change, but like focus on the work and let go of what you can't impact, right? Yeah, go ahead.
No, go on, go on.
I think that was sort of the end of that arc for me.
Do you think it will make people feel good to like give a little extra oomph in their job, like that gives them a sense of sort of forward motion and positive movement, even if it's not going to affect the fact that
Even if it's all for
it's off?
naught?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, Meta laid off 11,000 people.
right.
That if you were working at Meta, there wasn't, had you burned the midnight oil for 2 weeks, it wasn't going to change the fact that they weren't making money,
Right.
right? So, like, do what would feel fulfilling to you, but understand that it, we're all pieces of a very, very big pie. And sometimes it gets sliced and diced differently. And we can't personalize that.
Mm,
And there's no shame in being part of like effectively a really big trend. I think what's hard is that for a lot of people who are probably like mid to senior in their careers, in their 30s, this is a total slap in the face, right? Like they've never really had a recession. It was like boom time. And
no, wait a minute. If you're in your mid
what?
30s now, you graduated during the Great Recession. So that's
Okay, you graduated during the recession, but pretty much if you've been working from 2008 on, it's been pretty good. There's been an expectation of growth. And like if you worked at one of the big tech companies, for example, and you had an idea, somebody would give you a chunk of money and be like, sure, why not? Run with it. And this is a very different way to live.
Mm.
Of like, not only can I not run with what I think is like a really good idea, I can't travel for work anymore. And I don't have the head count I thought I would. And, you know, all of these things start to feel like they were expectations that could have, you know, that were owed. And actually they're not. And I'm sorry. That's hard to reckon with.
Yeah, if you've been in that sector. If you've been in media, on the other hand, you've known nothing but a dying industry.
Well, right. If you've been in media, like,
Petered out.
people in print are like, oh, please.
I know. I do think there is a sense of expectation shift. The pandemic started it, and chaos just feels like how it's going to be. Yeah. What do you think about, like, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought because I've been up since 6, since 5.
We were talking about chaos.
Chaos.
I don't think actually, but hold on one second on the chaos thing. If that gets baked into the fear of layoffs or job changes, I don't think we have to anticipate that it's going to be chaotic, because there is like rhyme and reason to it. But we do have to shift the expectation that there's going to be growth.
Right. That's interesting.
It's not, and it can feel chaotic when all of a sudden you were not planning to not have an income in February, right? That feels like, whoa, I need to rejigger. But it's not chaos. What that means is you need to look for another job. Right. It doesn't change who you are as a person or the work you like to do. Have
you ever been laid off?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. I was laid off at Time Inc. In 2005, maybe, which was like, for a long time, I just like loved working in dying media. And that really, because right, I went from a record label to a magazine company, but it was after Time Inc. that I was like, this is just like, I'm not enjoying this. I'm not enjoying watching, you know, everything get narrower. It's like not fun to be here. And there really is no room for creativity. I think that's a little bit of what's happening in tech now, right? And that was when I like pivoted into digital media. And then I got laid off again when I was part of an IAC joint venture. That was 2008. Right. And everybody could feel that coming. And I remember thinking to myself, like, am I allowed to be ever so slightly political? Like, if the market crash means that Obama could win, I'm going to be okay with losing my job.
Really?
That was like this.
That was
like,
before you were a kid.
Yeah, that was like where I put my anxiety. I was like, there are these two big things that I'm worried about. But I did something smart in that I refinanced my apartment right before. And I remember saying to my boss, like, I'm going to need some time off to it was like 2 hours to meet with like the mortgage broker or the bank or whatever it was. But I think I need to do this now while I still have a full-time job, right?
Income.
Yeah. And she was like, yeah, I would do that. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. And we like trudged along for another couple months. So I guess stuff like that one could do is useful. Yeah.
Christina says, hardest part of being laid off is not knowing when you will find a role, get paid, especially in the tech.
Yeah.
Any tips on dealing with that anxiety?
Yeah. I mean, the unknown is incredibly hard to navigate. And I remember when I was looking for a job, a friend of mine saying to me, to the extent that it's possible, just understand that at some point you're going to have a crap job like the rest of us that you're going to complain about. And you just have to hold the, like, I don't know when that's going to come in the meantime. And I think it's the idle time in those moments can be so hard, but I would really try to use it for good. So, like, if there's a place you've been wanting to volunteer that you haven't had time for, like, try to build skills and interests that have been kind of in the back of your head that you haven't had time to explore. So I completely and totally understand that anxiety. And I will also say that I think it was after my Time Inc. layoff when I was looking for a job and like kind of facing this, like, what am I going to do with my time? That I started crisis counseling, which was like the beginning of my long pivot into therapy. Because I was like, I have time. This is something I want to do. It takes forever. There's this training stuff. And it really did change the course of my life. But, it took another maybe, I don't know how many years, like maybe even like a full decade before I was able to be in private practice, but worth it, right? Yeah. And so you never know. Also, like, I think the way the tech layoffs specifically have gone is that they've been really fast and furious, and a lot of companies are going to be looking for people to do project work. And I would really, like, if you don't have a website, now is the time, like, get yourself ready to take on stuff that, while you're looking, you can be securing some sort of a cash flow in the meantime.
I think that's great advice. That's the advice that I would give. And then I have a question about that for Carolyn is, when we are anxious, we can sit and freeze and feel terrible and indulge in our favorite coping mechanisms. But sometimes we can get into action and channel that anxiety. And a great way to do that is to make sure your LinkedIn looks great, is to update your site. I think, though, you have to put limits on it, because there's then the tendency that your anxiety might drive you to never stop being online, to try to set up 10 networking meetings a day. Right. So that to me is the challenge. And I'd love, Carolyn, I'd love your thoughts on how do you say to yourself, I'm going to do this, but I'm only going to do so much. And then I'm going to give myself a pat on the back and then do the volunteering or the things that I have wanted to do. Like, how do you set up that heuristic?
I think first you have to, like, please, like, give yourself time to feel disappointed. And hold those feelings of like, this is not how I wanted this to go. Like, really have those feelings, because if you don't, and then you just like launch into this new thing, it's gonna like come up in watching like 7 hours of Netflix and then feeling terrible about yourself. So try to like let yourself have those feelings, and then like be reasonable, maintain a schedule, right? Like, and however your like personal clock or like family obligations go, keep yourself accountable to something, but know that you're probably going to have, an extra, even if you're volunteering, even if you're looking for consulting work, even if you have a networking call every day, you're going to have some free time, and try to think of it as free time, right? Like, that this is temporary. This is a season that's going to pass, and you want to try to like be present in some of the good things about it. Like, if you don't have a lot of money and you're really worried about spending it, take a long walk in the afternoon and be like, this is something I couldn't do last year at this time. Because I was like too worried about meeting with my manager in half an hour or whatever it is.
The 10 touches rule, I will repeat. I've been talking about this for years, but my husband taught it to me. I think it's networking gold, which is every week, 10 people. I'm going to reach out to 10 people. I could
Oh,
message
interesting.
them on LinkedIn. I could endorse them. I could click on their cute baby photo on Facebook. I could email them. I could call them up and say, hey, right? And when you have that limit, it's much easier to turn your brain off and from the
When
constant,
you're done.
right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't do enough. Am I ever going to get another job? Oh my God, again. Because you're
Right.
like,
And I like when I was laid off, I remember like obviously like a lot of friends and colleagues were laid off.
yeah,
So I developed like a routine with a couple of them. Like, so there was one person I would go to yoga with once a week. There was one person I would have lunch with at the same diner every Wednesday. And that was like part of my work
yeah,
in this was like, staying connected, doing some sharing and like not falling into like a hole of isolation in the same way.
I really like that.
It was
Oh,
great.
we are at time, and I'm
Okay.
going to give you your time, but thank you so much for our inaugural uh, office hours AMA, and we're going to do another one next week, right?
Yeah, we're in.
So until then,
We'll see you.
be well.
Bye.
Bye.